Next up, Mark Smedley. He's got the credentials here. He's been around Porsche. He's 42 years at PC. In the 26th year. He's been the past president and board member of several regions and clubs. He's been a PCA Concours judge. He's an SCCA Concours judge. He's judged at Carmel's Concours on the Avenue, where Porsche judge there. He's judged at Pebble Beach for the Porsche Club. Right now he's currently got just a few things he's working on, like the 58 Speedster, the 64 356, the 67 911S, the 69 911. The man knows what he's talking about. He's going to give you the judge's perspective of what they come into when they're at parade. Mark, yours?
Yeah, that's great. First of all, I'd like to know who we're talking to. How many novices are here? How many grizzled parade entrants? Few. Okay, good. I want to give you a perspective of what the judges do, how they're thinking, what they're looking at. Mine's not about prep or anything. It's how to play the game and how to interact with the judges and what the judges are doing. And I guess who's operating the slides? Keep the slides on. Who are the judges? First of all, well, they're a collection of experienced and knowledgeable people that run the range from historians and enthusiasts to professionals who run shops. John Wilhoit, a very well-known shop down in Southern California, he judged on occasion. Tim Goodrich was usually involved in entrance, but he would judge if he was free. And then you have knowledgeable people. Prescott Kelly, everybody knows Prescott. He's a businessman by trade, not a professional restorer. In fact, that's Prescott in his back. It's a cute picture at the Colorado Aspen Parade. That's Jim Perrin's original unrestored 904. Jim's pulling it in, and Prescott's getting in position on the lawn at Aspen. First time anybody had seen that car in about 30 years. Jim had it hermetically sealed somewhere. But Prescott's just a businessman. I'm a retired physician. I've been a student of these cars for 40 years. I started in Indianapolis when I was in school, and my first mentor was Mike Robbins, owner of the famous 500,000-mile Speedster, Mr. Speedster. Been to every parade. Mike was like my second father. As I said, you'll have also people that have been experienced and are contestants. If they've had entrance and done well in parades, they're also considered qualified for judging. Let's move on to the next slide. What to expect on the field. Usually they're nice open areas. We have had them in condominium parking lots, which are awful. The Tampa parade was in the train. Mainly that got moved because we had torrential rains and the field was a bog. So they moved us into this condominium parking lot for that. But generally they're very lovely areas. Most golf courses have good drainage these days, so they can put them on the lawn. But the thing to keep in mind as an entrant is these cars in the morning are brought out and staged to a schedule. So you want to be on time. You want to be there when you're told to be there for staging. And sometimes, some of the more disorganized parades, they just say show up, and that's usually chaos. In the good parades, they're going to give you a time to show up, and they'll stage the cars by classes. Because the cars are grouped on the lawn by classes. They like to have all the cars together. It makes for nice if you're just looking at cars and comparing, and then the judges go nuts if they have to run around all over the place looking for cars. So you want to be on time. Preparation, this is a little bit about preparation, but it's things we sort of expect and would like to have if we're judges when we come to judge the cars. You want to be ready. When you get there, the car should be done. Light dusting only. If you're still looking for stuff and trying to clean something, it's too late. Should have been done days ago. Know what time your judging time is. Usually they will clearly talk about over the PA system of when judging begins, and at that point, you're not supposed to mess with the cars and maybe some light dusting. Have your score sheets filled out. You should have your name, car number, information on the score sheets. Don't wait till the judges are there and they're looking at the sheets and there's no names or numbers on the sheets. Get those filled out, have them under the wiper on the windshield ready for the judges when they get there. Stay with the car. We've had several incidents where we go to a car and there's nobody there. You really don't want to annoy the judges. Number one, there aren't that many qualified judges, and so most parades we've got more cars to judge than we'd like because there's not enough of us. And so we have to stay on a schedule. And if it delays us looking around for an owner, it just creates problems for everybody. So once the judging begins, stick with your car. Keep the area neat. If you have preparation material, keep it away from the car and out of the way. The Concour is the showcase event for a Porsche parade. And you want to make a nice presentation for the entire lawn. So don't have a bunch of rags and a bag of stuff that requires quick detailer and a bunch of stuff laying around behind the car. Get all that stuff cleaned up, put away, keep the area nice so everybody can enjoy the area. The initial part of the judging, the head judge will do a walk around. So when your car is ready, it should be closed up. We'll ask you to open it later, but keep everything closed up because the initial part of the judging is a lot of. Now, something to have in addition for preparation, especially if you're in full restoration or in preservation, you want documentation. In preservation, they mandate either a certificate of authenticity or a car dex. In the others, it's nice to have it, especially if you have some issue with the car, with the judges, or simply want to talk about the car. So, window sticker or sales invoice, that helps document the car. The car dex is the gold standard. Of course, they disappeared in the late 60s. I have one from my 67. And I've seen people have them for 68s, but after that, I've never heard of a car dex after that. So somewhere in there, they disappeared. Porsche got smart and decided they could make more revenue with the certificates of authenticity. And all they're doing is pulling the car dex files they have and transcribing the data. And if you've had any experience with this, they are notoriously inaccurate. And yet it's all we have. And it's still considered a standard. Something else, if when you're in full restoration, you don't want to argue with a judge, but you might diplomatically suggest he reconsider something on a bolt he got on with the parts book. Because the early parts books will have the plating finish on the bolt and what size bolt it is and where it belongs. So if you really want to get down to it in restoration, have a parts book with you because it can solve a lot of issues. Let's move on here. The process itself, the general feeling for the car. Does the car sparkle, or is it sort of a dull road warrior? You don't know where it's going to fit in there. So you sort of get a general feeling. When it comes in, we only have 5 minutes to look at a car. So if you experience judge, you have a routine, you have a rhythm. And the important thing for fairness in judging is that you look at the same thing in every car. Now keep in mind, in 5 minutes you can't look at everything, but you've got to pick your areas and you have to look at the same area in every car. Now the other side of the coin is, as an entrant, you don't know where he's going to look. So here's where the game is. 5 minutes, but that's all they have, and it's time. There's a timer there, and usually they're calling out. There's 2 minutes, 1 minute, stop. So the exterior judge, he's done his walk around. He'll finish up now in the 5 minutes when it starts. He can do more detail, get down, look at ripples, and look at surfaces for paint. It's a convertible. He's going to look at the condition and fit of the top and the rubber, and the rear window, plastic to see if there's scratches or hazing, anything like that. Stitching, condition at the top. Going to look at the glass to see how clean it is. The lights, the lenses, and the plating on the lights. Now glass, cars sit out on the lawn, they may get some hazing just from sitting there from when you wiped it off this morning. I, for one, as a judge, it's the reality of the situation, and I'm not going to deduct for that. On the other hand, if you got bug spots on the car you didn't get off, you're in trouble. Stone chips, that's coincidental stuff. If you've got a windshield that's really a mess, you might lose some points. But a minor chip somewhere, if the car's been driven, that's part of the car. And to make big deductions for that, it just gets out of hand. The other thing is, I would much rather reward an original windshield, a Sigla, that has a few chips, than a pristine aftermarket. Because you get into authenticity again, and originality always trumps replacement. Kim?
Would you say that holds true for restoration versus preservation? Because in restoration, my perspective is everything is perfect, and they have purchased a new windshield, but they have made sure that the correct Sigla markings are on it, whether they've had to erase or polish off the blinking Pinkerton.
Oh well,
yeah.
A Sigla, perfect Sigla is a home run.
Absolutely.
But a replacement, you know it's not, so they lose authenticity points. But it may be perfect on presentation, but it loses authenticity points. In preservation, you only have authenticity. Condition, wear and tear is not a major issue in preservation.
Not to interrupt you, but at least in our zone, we take full points. Are you talking full points or quarter point, takes full points?
Oh, they take tenths off. Yep. So a little ding might be a tenth.
On a cabriolet, they judge at the top up, right?
Yes.
Do you have a hard top installed? How does the judging work?
Well, hard tops were a factory option in Boxsters. They were not a factory option on 356s. They were on the 911. Some of the 911 cabrios had hard tops. I think
you got a
judge
weak top.
I think if you choose to show it with the hard top, we would judge it as with the hard top. We would look at the soft top. We judge the top you gave us. But an accessory top, you get dinged for that because it's not an original piece, like on a Speedster. If you had a glass bar top, the glass bars were available, but they weren't a factory option. To my knowledge. A lot of dealers sold them, they weren't a factory option. They're not a factory accessory. Exterior again, metal trim, bright work, that speaks for itself. Scratches, dents, rust, things like that. Tires, the exterior judge looks at the exterior condition of the tires, the sidewalls. No cracks. We don't like slathered iron all. Nice satiny rubber with a nice sheen is the way a nice fresh tire looks. Start slathering it and you get points. That's like over restoring. That's like over preparation. Bumpers, again, the fit of the bumpers is important. The condition of the paint, if they're painted bumpers and the bright ones. Interior. Now this is where we're really emphasizing the judges not touch the cars, but it's very difficult to judge an interior without putting the towel down and sitting on the sill. But like if a judge wants to open the glove box, they should ask the entrant, or the entrant can anticipate that and open the glove box, or ask them, can I open the glove box for you? That kind of thing. But you're going to look at the seats as far as the covering, the shape of the padding, the recliner mechanisms and the rails, the fasteners, the rails, and paint on the rail brackets. Carpets and mats, cleanliness, condition, wear, authenticity, headliner. Interesting story on headliner. Portland Parade. One Portland removed, not the last Portland. 5 356s. Most people know that the original headliner material for a 356 is not available. It hasn't been available for years. So you don't, either you ding everybody for a reproduction headliner or you don't ding anybody, but it comes out even either way. The fifth car, I judged 4. We drew lots. It was just a random thing. Fifth car is a black with red interior Carrera 2 coupe, sunroof coupe. Stunning car, belonging to Ken Edo. Everybody knows Ken Edo. I stick my head in there. It's an original headliner. He had stashed away a new old stock original headliner and put it in when he restored the car. What do? He had some smudges on his rearview mirror. Nice early work. You have to do that to be fair. You really do.
Why can't you give a bonus point?
Well, you can't give bonus points. You're only allowed so many points. So he got a de facto bonus. In fact, I got him, he had the wrong material on his speakers, and he had his window cranks. I still remember that car. It's a stunning car. And he had some pits and shred on his window cranks, but otherwise that car was unbelievable. Unbelievable. But you have that kind of thing. You may run up against something like that. And if you're in the business and know these cars, you know you can't get a headline. You just can't. And the early 911 guys are running up against that now. The original stuff in the short wheelbase 911s and 69s. I have a 69T with an original headliner. It's a funny gray. And you can't get that stuff. The holes, the patterns are wrong, and all that. But they're around. Somebody will show up with an NOS headline. You know they will. Look at the dash as far as the padding. 911s are notorious for cracks. Again, the reproduction dashes, if you've ever messed with these things on the early long wheelbase, 69 through 73s, the reproduction dashes, the fogger notches aren't right. and they look lovely, but they're wrong, and you got to fiddle with the defogger vents to get them to look right. So what's better, an original dash with a little tiny crack, or a replacement dash with goofed up defogger vents? So you can get them either way on that. There is a way to make the reproductions look right, and I'm told there's some out of Europe that are better, but I haven't seen one of those.
On the dash on that, there are people out there who can't repair those dashes now. How do you look at something that's been repaired?
Well, just dashes, and the graining is completely wrong. They stick out like a sword.
So it's just almost better to leave
Yeah.
the crack than try and
Now, I have an upholstery guy that can stretch and recover one of those foam dashes with the original vinyl. And you can't tell. He's really good. But you might as well buy it. I mean, he's expensive. But I've seen his dashes. I saw one of his dashes in the 73 RS, and you couldn't tell it from a perfect original dash. He's a wizard. He does all of his to have his work. And he's my neighbor, which is sort of he borrows my glass cabinet, and I borrow glue. Door jams, footwells. We got into the grease thing. We mentioned the grease thing already. These cars were delivered with grease on these locks and mechanisms. You can't deduct for it unless it's just black grunge or crud. It should be there. It's part of the originality of the car. The upholstery on the doors and the pockets. The notorious thing are 69 through 73 mat pockets. They get wet. Somebody messed with the door and repaired. They pulled away the vapor barrier. Moisture gets into the cardboard and the pocket warps. And the bungee cord goes bad. You're lucky if you get one of these cars and it's just a bungee cord. You snug it all up and the pocket fits fine. But if it's been warped from moisture, you're dead. And they're ungodly expensive. All that foam stuff was very hard to do. Inside of the glass, this gets into the hazing thing again. If you got hazing, if your car's been out there for a couple hours in the sun, you're probably going to have some hazing.
Can we talk about scratches on glass, please?
We can talk about it. That's a production.
Well, it is, but if they've taken efforts to try to
Polish it out.
fix the scratches,
Well, if you have some ripples, my C Coupe had some wiper scratches in it. I spent, I don't know how long trying to polish it out. And you still have ripples. If you polish it well, it's pretty hard to see. The judge might spot it, you might lose a tenth. But out in the open, you got to be in the right light to even see that.
So you're going to take points off if they've attempted to.
Oh, sure, because it's still not as original. There's still an absolute there. Yeah.
And I'd like to talk just a little bit more about grease, because I think in our zone here, if a judge, and we're very tactile in Zone 7, we go everywhere. We try to find dirt and grease and stuff like that. It's just part of our game. So whenever a judge sees anything, it's dirty, whether you just put it on there that morning or not. So in our zone, what we pretty much do is all grease, oil, film is eliminated. That way you're assured that there can't be a deduction. Sorry. Now, I'll say this also, my experience at parade. And we expect when we go to parade that our parade judges are the cream of the United States. Many of them I know, that's where I'm going. Many of them, like Mark, flies to all the parades, doesn't enter, he flies, he judges, and then he comes home. That's his job. And there are many of them like that, like Mark, that do that. But there are others that are, their first parade judging. A 993 that we showed years ago in a full restoration class, they asked to see my jack. I pulled the jack out. The car's 2 years old. I'm showing the freaking thing in full restoration. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. The bag and everything. The factory grease, yellow grease, is on it. And I got dinged because the judge said I had too much grease on it. I did talk to the entire team, and I said, listen, this is the jack has never been out. And that's how much the factory put on it. But they still deducted the 10th of a point. So my comment is, even in parade, Mark, I would go and I would take all the grease off of everything, and your hood's going to close tough, your engine lid might not come up the hill effectively, but take it off, and just have it.
Let me finish with that.
Okay.
Harvey and Smith would put their 356 together with no grease in the front axle. And before cars were driven onto the lawn, guys would never put fuel in the carburetors because they'd sweat fuel on the stain. That's just stupid. Now, the only thing I can say about that is I disagree with that. In a parade, the standard is the car is as it was delivered. And those cars were delivered with lubricants on various surfaces. Sure. Now, too much or sloppy, that's one thing. The only saving grace I can say, if that judge looked at every jack the same way, okay. That's the only thing I can say. And maybe yours had more than the next, and he decided to be an idiot about it. You know, what can I say? Shit. I don't agree with that. And at parade, my feeling about this is, and I tell you where Concour is going, especially on the Avenue, Carmel, even SCCA, this business is looking for dirt. A lot of us feel like if all you're doing is looking for dirt, you don't know the cars. You don't know the authenticity. You don't know the way the car is supposed to be. And I mentioned this earlier when we were talking. Keep in mind that up through the 80s, every 911 that came off the line was driven 25 miles. If it was rainy, if it was snowy, or whatever, Heinz took that car out and drove it 25 miles. So those cars were delivered with an initial dusting of road grime. And then they put Cosmoline over the road grime. So the whole thing's gotten out of hand. These jewel-like restorations. I mean, Pebble Beach has addressed this a little bit with Pebble Tour. They want their cars driven. I, for one, don't get crazy about this. Some of the old guard, Weldon's drove out of Virginia. He still wants to dislocate his elbow and go for dirt up under a dash. And I'm sorry. These cars got dusty and dirty in the factory. And so some of that has to be allowed for. And to get crazy about that misses the real gestalt of the car. We need to move on.
Just a quick question. I think during parade they are going to go into the dash. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, that's part of the judging.
So just for people's information.
Yeah, underside of the dash is fair game. The wiring, bottom of the radio, steering column, all of that is looked at. Let's move on. Storage. Size, the inside of the lid, the hinges, the trunk carpet. Is it clean, dog hair, you know, battery acid holes, that kind of stuff. The fuel tank, notorious sending unit, that cork gasket goes dry and they leak gasoline and mess up the fuel tank. I think that's a good maintenance point. If you got an early 911 with a sending unit, change the gasoline because they're going to mess up. The washer reservoir, get the blue crud off of it, get all that cleaned up. Make sure the battery's nice, the terminals are clean. Fuse block looks good, there's no funny sparks in there going on. Tools. Yes, we do know the sizes of the wrenches, and we will look for them. A lot of people spend a lot of time and money putting together correct toolkits. And if you've ever been on eBay, you know how dear some of these wrenches are.
Yes.
The 1214 and a 356 toolkit's worth your first more. The jack, again, condition. Those jacks did have some grease on the shaft. The shaft was not this highly polished chrome thing. It was a Parkerized gray, blackish kind of thing. The tire strap in the 356, leather and most, cloth and speedsters. It's really cool when you see an original spare in there. It's pretty cool. And there's, you know, judges are human, so they get swayed on things. You see that kind of stuff and you may ignore something else. You know, that kind of thing. Spare tire. Now the judge, the storage judge also looks at the outer wheel surfaces and the hubcaps. That's part of their. Let's move on. Engine compartment. The engine compartment judge usually is issued a rag because that's where he's going to get oil. Air-cooled engines, they all do. You're kind of looking for the luster of the castings, any corrosion, what the fasteners look like, the oil lines. The engine tin, the condition of the paint on the tin, the fasteners, the inner surfaces of the firewalls and the sound deadening material, the inside of the lid and the hinges and the latch, generator belts, pulleys, general wiring and electronic components, voltage regulator, alternator. In a 911, you got the whole circuit board over on the side. Great place for dirt to hide and all that stuff. Yeah.
On like 356s and the early short wheelbase cars, you've got a lot of aluminum in there, the engine case and the engine compartment. How do you clean it? What do you use?
It's hard to really go after aluminum without damaging other things, unless you just take it out.
Yeah, I used to use gum, because I used it on my motorcycle. And that worked good, but you don't like hosing it off.
No, putting a hose, I'm sorry?
Dry ice glass.
Well, yeah. If you can find a place to do it.
Well, that's the answer. There's
What did he
magic.
say?
And then you gotta read.
One little trick I've done, you stumble onto things, but you go somewhere and find those brass machinist brushes, those wooden handled brass brushes.
Yep, that's what I do.
Spray, no, not with a brass brush.
Yep.
Not, and it'll brighten
That's
it up
what I
and
do.
make it look really nice. Because if you use an aluminum brightener, which has acid and stuff in it, it's going to take the plating off your fasteners, and it's going to attack your engine tin. You'd be surprised what WD-40 put on there judiciously, and then a brass brush on the castings that show. It's really pretty neat stuff for cleaning that up.
I had a question on that. Because it's on the block to help preserve it.
Yeah.
If you take it off, put it back on and wood.
Well, here's where we've gone.
It looks good.
Cosmoline, the preservation guys have sort of figured it out with Cosmoline. The full restoration guys don't like it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever seen a fully restored car where somebody put the Cosmoline back on it. I've not seen it.
Yep.
How it look like. When you look at
Less and less is
were they
painted.
actually painted or is it?
No, they were painted.
Real paint.
They were painted because on an original car, you look at it and you'll find zinc under the paint. Now, there were black oxide fasteners in places, and the early parts books will tell you where. The 4 bolts, the wheel cylinders.
For the most part, you stick the mirror here, just glance, everything's black, and probably
Yeah, but you don't stick a mirror in it, you're in the back. Undercarriage judges get a towel. That's part of what your issue from the judge. But try WD-40, wipe it off, and then it'll clean up with, if it's, it leaves an oily residue, but then go back over with DX330 or Prep Sol, one of those nice, non-aggressive solvents for prepping. You'd be surprised how nice they'll be.
or dry as glass.
Yeah, right. What's the machine, 50 grand? I couldn't find anybody up here that does it.
I thought about buying one just for the money I could make hiring a crew to do it.
Mercedes box, this is the casting stuff again. Sheet metal on the bottom of the sheet metal and the heater boxes. Suspension, caliper, shocks, what kind of fasteners, cables, the straps for the cables, and the inner wheels and tires. And the front chassis is pretty much the same. It's a little different with water-cooled cars because they can see the engine. Of course, steering box, the tie rods, and the inner front wheels and tires. Let's go to the next one. Okay. We've had a few questions and answers already. Now, it's 5 minutes. What happens then is we will powwow. Most of the time now, the judges will powwow. You can't know everything about anything, and as soon as you think you do, you're an idiot. So you may have questions on an area you judged, and what we have typically done is we will throw that question mark out to the group, and we'll say, well, was that bolt black, or was that bolt yellow, or was that bolt silver, or what color were those shocks? And if there's a consensus, then we score it accordingly. If there's not a consensus amongst the group, we won't deduct. It's the only fair thing to do. Then everybody tallies their score sheets, turns them into the chief judge. Chief judge reviews them, makes sure everything's done the way they should, then they're given to the runner. We, at that point, will typically thank the owner. Depending on the number of cars we have, we may move on. We may have some brief conversations with the owner on some feedback and stuff we noticed. Things that we diplomatically thought could change, or thanking for having a gorgeous car, one or the other. Now, the score sheets are turned in, they're rechecked again. The scores are posted. Usually it takes an hour or so to post them. But then there's a protest period for 1 hour after they're posted. And you can protest. There's a fee for it. That's number one, to disincentivize people from creating this mess. And number two, it's revenue for the club, for the help. At the end of the protest period, the scores are final and the score sheets are returned. Now this is where I can do some lobbying here. Pebble Beach, Carmel, SCCA does not return score sheets, and they do not allow protests. The judge's decision is final, and there's none of this wrangling and angst and avarice that goes on with the protest. Because some of it is childish, some of it is mean-spirited, some of it is gamesmanship. Bruce Anderson was real big on this. We lobbied for a long time that the score sheet should not be returned because it just creates a level of bad feelings all the way around. If there's a challenge, learn about it and fix it at the next Concour, or have a courteous discussion with the judge after the fact, and you play the game. But you have that option. In restoration, you better have documentation to verify what you're talking about. We've done some things. I'll give you an example of a little thing that went on at the Charlotte Parade. Very wealthy East Coast collector, commercial guy, has a big collection, has had a couple of plastic bag cars. We bought a brand new car, put it in a plastic bag, took it out 20 years later for preservation, that kind of crap. He brought a preservation car to the parade and forgot the certificate of authenticity, and so decided to enter it in restoration. And the argument was, well, we did refinish the fan and a couple of pieces, so it's a restored car. And we looked at this. One of my co-judges that year was Bob Rassa, who's been in PCA since Hector was a pup. I think Bob is a young-looking guy. He's much older than he was. He's been in PCA forever. He's one of the last guys standing. He and I are looking at this car, and we're looking at these, and we know the game here. I asked the son of the owner, I said, why did you enter this car? He says, well, because we couldn't win in preservation. Well, there's a good reason. So Rassa looks at me with this sparkle in his eye. He says, I'm chairman of the protest committee. He says, see that RS over there? It was gorgeous signal yellow 73 RS, which is a stunning restoration. And a restoration. And so after we were done judging, one of us very quietly went over and said, you should protest that car. And he did. And the rest is history. As the chairman of the protest committee, judged those cars. So, and we thought that was the only fair thing to do because it was being gamed really unfairly by some people with too much horsepower. So that's what we did. To be fair about it.
In the modified class, we understood that you had to have a timing slip, current timing slip for 2014 to be in that classification.
Timing slip meaning a competition time.
Right. Is that correct or not?
No, I honestly don't know.
It is for zone.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's the case for parade.
Yeah, but I don't believe for parade.
Modified is no holds barred as far as I know. Now there is the race car class, which are supposed to be factory pedigree race cars. And then there's modified, which is whatever you want. It's a custom car.
Right. But
I'm not sure at a parade you need a time slip for a modified car.
Modified though, this is definition engine or it has to be signed to the builder or some roof or something.
Well, they got into a mess
we have
last
the
year.
build of the Jägermeister 914-6 GT car.
Yeah.
We've been restoring it since early in the year. And, you know, we're pretty far along in that process. Now we have to take it out before parade and compete with it to get the timing slip.
It's a 914-6 GT.
Right.
It's a factory race car.
Yeah.
That's where you ought to enter.
Yeah, we just wanted clarification, so
Yeah,
make sure.
that's not a modified car, that's a factory race car.
But
You got documentation.
But it's a clump.
Oh,
It's a clump.
oh.
And
I
it's
can't-
full-on restoration. Full-on restoration also, right?
Yes.
The car's fully
It's a
you're fully
competition.
restoring it.
It's a competition car. I would put it in competition rather than modified. probably ought to talk to one of the parade rules committee members.
Has it ever run around a lap on a tractor? I'm sorry, has it ever run a lap?
Oh, yes.
Those are the hardest cars to
Yeah,
check.
it's
You know, cleanliness, authenticity.
Because you passed tech parade.
Just not since last year, the engine was on it, had worked in it, took a while to get it done, so it hasn't been out.
You know, you can take, you can,
Hear all the questions. I think he said something about changing the registration.
yeah.
You can do that online
Can
right
you?
now.
Can you?
You can do all kinds of changes online to your existing parade registration.
Wow. That's,
There's a whole lot of stuff you can do online with your existing registration. Okay?
maybe they've got it figured out.
Oh, that's been there for more than a year.
The only thing I know is that we registered at ODART 30 to get into the Hyatt, and we still didn't get it.
You can, for example, you can go in if you want to change your meal selections and so forth. So, for example, I have a meal package. If I'm not going to stick to go to one, I can go in and change it. I'll eventually get a credit back. I won't say how long it's going to be before it shows on my credit card. But you can do that up until probably the 5th or the 10th of June, something like that.
That's great.
And so if you tell them ahead of time, that makes
Registration used to be pretty parochial, and until
Yes.
you got a human in front of you, you couldn't change it.
It's gotten a little better. Yeah.
I was gonna say, you get up at ODART 30 to do your registration. You know, the word out was originally, registration starts at 6 a.m. East Coast time.
Right.
I know people that went on at right after midnight here
Really?
and registered.
Really?
Yes.
See, we got up at 3.
Yeah, I did too.
And they waited 2 hours because so many people
Yeah.
tried to get on it that first hour after.
We got up at 3. We got up at 3.
That's fine. It's just, how do you find out what is lacking if you don't know where, if you don't get
Oh,
the sheet?
I should have mentioned this.
Can you repeat the question, Mark?
She wants to know how do you learn from the sheets if you get them back? Well, the judges, when they make a deduction, have to make a note on the sheet what the deduction was for.
Yes.
So when you get the sheets back, if you can read the handwriting, you should know what they were deducting for.
But that goes back to this delivery that's on the rear because it's a perfect deadline.
Well, some of that is.
That's why they don't want to get the sheet back, because there's a discretion.
I think the question was,
But a deduction should be noted.
I think the question was, we got the perception that you do not get the sheet back.
Oh yeah, you do.
You do.
And the thing is, you don't in the others. Carmel, Pebble Beach, SCCA, you don't. In PCA, you do get the
Okay, that's the
And the judge has to note the reason for his deduction.
That is the cleanliness.
Well, in your guideline, you can get into the PCR and get a copy of the score sheet for your class.
They'll be online when they get done, because I've got it on the thumb
To go
drive.
through each of this individually, you'd all be glazed over. Go through the different classes.
When they do the street class and everything else, greasing the seats, 99 states, rails and tracks, that's greasing.
Yeah.
It's great, nice and clean, and doesn't break down, because it says it. Some class, I completely, it's like, oh, there's grease there.
No, that goes back to that whole thing. I've seen judges deduction for lost cars get grease on the road.
Then it doesn't count.
I used to get, I had a long time. Everybody should have a good time. That's the important thing. This is supposed to be fun. This is, you know, the problem we get into is that people will spend $250,000, $300,000 to make a perfect speedster, and then usually those people have egos as big as all outdoors, and they bring it to a parade and they expect to kick everybody's ass. Well, they don't, and then they get pissed off, and then it's not fun. When I was a kid, I was 11 years old, I built Revell kits and monogram kits and everything. These things are just bigger kits.
That's the way I look at it.
Authenticity is a trivia game. That's really all it is.
But it looks new with proper writing. It looks, you get in it, it looks like it came off showroom floor, you're buying new, and it's got the right amount of grease, it's got the right spots.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in good shape. It's too much, too little difference.
Yeah. Got a question back?
Yes.
I was in the avenues last year, and they made me start the car, shut it
Yes.
off. Are they gonna ask you to start the car in the
We
parade?
stopped doing that at parades because we had somebody start a car in reverse and hit somebody. They want the original size.
That's it, just the original size.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the original manufacturer.
on pretty hard about that. Michelin makes a nice radio, although you can't get it by X stock. And it's cool when you have a nice set of grass tires. Nobody in the right mind would drive on them now. We call them grass tires because they're all original tires for show. But you wouldn't drive on them because they'd be dangerous as the devil. Yeah, but original size is